Hey guys, it's the Duke, and in this week's video we're going to be talking about Subnautica Below Zero, a game that proves that everything really is better under the sea. Alright, here's the intro. Before we go much further, it's important to know that this video is going to contain spoilers for Below Zero, so if you are spoiler averse, then maybe don't watch it, but I'm going to do my best to try and avoid them as much as possible. I want to start by saying that I can't say enough nice things about the first Subnautica game. It's one of my favorite games that I have literally ever played in my whole life. I frequently describe it as one of the best open world survival games you can find, and at a pretty reasonable price. I think the original game is only $30 or something like that, which is much more reasonable than the $60 games that are 10 hours or less and are fairly bare bones. So when I heard that there was going to be a sequel, I was pretty excited, to say the least. And I've been looking forward to it and following its development ever since I heard about it. In fact, I've actually refrained from playing any of it or seeing anything I could about the game up until the moment I'd be able to play it in full. So when I first played it in this video here, this was my actual first try at playing it. Now I want to start off by saying that Below Zero is truly better in just about every way that you can think of when it comes to the original Subnautica. But it's also not really perfect, and there are some new additions that I'm not a huge fan of, but we'll get to those a little bit later on. I want to first start off by saying though that the game is a much better looking game than the first one. The texture pop-in is a lot less noticeable. It's just a lot more refined. You're not so much worrying about, coming into a densely populated area and some of the textures loading in like the last second, as was common in the first game. So that's a huge improvement. And I also think too that the Sea Truck, which is the newest vehicle in Subnautica, is such a massive improvement to what you had in the first game. In the first game you had the Sea Moth, which was really fast and nimble. It had storage, so it was somewhat modular, but it wasn't super durable, and you couldn't really take it into the deepest parts of the game, although it would help you out for a lot of the first game. Then you had the Colossus, which I honestly hated the Colossus. I'm sure there are people out there that really liked it, but I hated it. It was nerve-wracking to pilot that thing, especially later in the game when you have to go into the very deep and somewhat claustrophobic corridors, and you have this like gigantic Titanic looking vessel that you have to take through there, and you can't really see when you're piloting these vehicles, so you're just bumping into everything, all while you're trying not to get eaten by Leviathan. But you kind of needed to use the Colossus because it was a mobile base. You could build things in it. It had a bunch of storage. You could transport the Prawn Suit. So, and also it was completely necessary for you to be able to finish the game. I mean, I know you could have taken the Prawn Suit the whole time, but the Prawn Suit in the first game moved so slowly that it was better to have the Colossus with you. So enter the Sea Truck, which is somewhere in the middle between the Sea Moth and the Colossus. Now, what was cool about the Sea Truck is that at first it's just the single driver module, so it's kind of like the Sea Moth. But as you scan blueprints, you can expand onto the Sea Truck, and you can add a module that just gives you storage. You could add a fabricator module to be able to craft things on the go. You could add a module that has a bed in it if you wanted to sleep in your Sea Truck. But what was also much more useful though was to have a module that allowed you to take the Prawn Suit with you. So to have a vehicle that was kind of like the Sea Moth, but also gave you storage, but also gave you the ability to carry the Prawn Suit, that was the perfect compromise. And it also makes sense from a gameplay standpoint that the Colossus isn't here, because this is also a much smaller, more focused game, and that's fine, but that is something to take into consideration too, that this isn't really a true sequel to the first Subnautica. It's more like a standalone expansion. It's another story, but I wouldn't really call it Subnautica 2. Anyway, the Sea Truck was incredible. I loved using it, and I liked being able to take the Prawn Suit with me everywhere. In addition to the sea truck being just a much better vehicle for this game, I feel like the Prawn Suit as well has been improved dramatically. In the first game, it was a practical necessity that you had to have the jump jet upgrade and you had to have the grappling arm in order to be able to move around effectively with the Prawn Suit, especially when you needed to go vertically or you were going deeper. In Below Zero, the jump jets I feel are just far more effective. You can actually use them to ascend at a reasonable rate and not have to, do it like slowly, like ascend a little bit at a time and then stop. In fact, I thought the jump jets were so much better this time that I didn't even take the grappling arm upgrade for any time I was using the Prawn Suit. I would use the drill arm and then the regular arm to pick things up. So a much more improved experience in the Prawn Suit as a whole. In addition to changes to the vehicles within the game, there are also a bunch of little tiny optimizations that I think are important that help make the game feel a little bit more streamlined. For example, you now have the ability to pin recipes. And I know this seems like a really small thing because you could just go look recipes up, but with as much crafting as you do in Subnautica, it's super important to be able to see those recipes on screen so that way you have like some degree of progress when you are farming minerals or when you need to craft things. So the ability to pin recipes was super nice. Some other things that I liked in this game are the new biomes. There's quite a few of them, and they're all beautiful and gorgeous and somewhat haunting in their own special ways. I liked the sea monkeys. At first it was kind of annoying when they stole my tool, but eventually they come around and then they start giving you resources, which is actually kind of cool. I once got nickel ore at a super early part in the game just because I was exploring and a sea monkey decided to hand it to me, so that was kind of neat. I also like too that in all of the logs in the game, which is the primary storytelling device to help you learn more about the world, that almost all of those logs are narrated. That's a massively huge change. I'm not one of those gamers that likes to spend all of their time reading logs when I play a game. I feel that a game should show, not tell how a story is. So the fact that they narrated these audio logs, that's a huge step up from what you had in the first game, and I feel that goes a long way towards increasing the production value of the game, but also helping you know more about the world. And then on the topic of Leviathans, there are more of them. They are just as terrifying as they were in the first game. As I said, they're more aggressive, and there are more variety of them as well. So if you didn't play the first game because it was scary, because everything under the water is scary, well, this game is no different. Now, this game also, too, has a much more focused story, in both a good and a bad way. In the story of this game, you actually interact with other people, which is kind of weird, because in the first game, it was a very lonely experience. The only people you interacted with at all were through audio logs or the various alien buildings. But for the most part, you were just alone. In Below Zero, you're still mostly alone, but you do actually interact with a few human characters throughout. And again, I won't spoil some of those things and what they are, but also you do interact, of course, with the aliens that are present throughout the world, the architects as they're known. Now, obviously, the biggest change to Below Zero is the fact that there is much more to do on land versus just in the water. I was really excited about this when I heard that they were going to, focus a little bit more on above ground stuff. They were going to add more gameplay and some, gameplay changes for that. But in reality, I didn't quite care for the execution of the above ground stuff. It was not my favorite. For one, you spend too much of your time trying not to freeze to death. When you're above water, you no longer have to worry about oxygen because now you breathe oxygen. However, you do have to worry about hypothermia and getting too cold. At first, when the game introduces this to you, it's not really a big deal. You occasionally find these plants that heat you up, and there are specific food items you can consume that increase your body heat level, kind of like adding oxygen to your tank. But in the latter portions of the game, when you have to spend a good chunk of your time on land, this becomes incredibly tedious, at least until you have a few upgrades. Now, eventually you can craft a suit that allows you to deal with cold weather more effectively. You'll be able to find and craft items that allow you to increase your body heat. You can take a thermos full of hot coffee. So now the hot coffee machine actually has a use. But you can do those kinds of things to help you survive on land. But that doesn't mean that surviving on land is easy either, because there are a lot of things that want to kill you on land. For example, these stupid snow dog things that you can see here. The first time they attack you, it's, there's initial surprise, it's kind of nerve-wracking, and then by the 8th time they attack you, because you're not able to really get away from them that easily, especially when you're on foot. But by the 8th time they attack you, you're kind of just over it and you want to be done with it. And then there's the ice worm, which has been shown in a lot of promotional material, so I don't really feel like it's that much of a spoiler. But the ice worm is a gigantic pain to deal with. There are ways to help you deal with it later on, but by the time you get those upgrades, you may never even have to encounter the ice worm again. So really, it's just this gigantic annoyance for very little payoff. And with the ice worm, the whole point of it is it's supposed to be a tense encounter, and it is tense, mostly in that it's incredibly unpredictable and it's hard to avoid, and awkward things happen. For example, when you get hit by the snow worm, as you can see in this clip here, you kind of just awkwardly collide with the terrain and you can't really do anything about it. And then by the time that your character recovers from the awkward collision, you may get attacked again. So the ice worm was just not fun to deal with. There really isn't anything you can do about it. Again, there are things to help you deal with it, but the ice worm's always going to be a problem. Those snow dog things are a gigantic pain. And the other thing about being on land too is that until you get a specific vehicle that you can use on the ice, it's just very tedious and slow moving around on land. It's very disjointing, especially because Subnautica is a game about being underwater. And I know that they were trying to do something different with the above ground stuff, but for me it really fell flat. Now that isn't to say that, they shouldn't try it again, but I don't know, it's hard because I feel that it just like really took me out of the game. It was really frustrating at certain points because in this game you don't really have maps. You do get one, kind of map that you can use it to find the approximate locations of facilities, but when you're on land, you're kind of just wandering around, and that panic that you experience when you're underwater trying to find your way out of a cave, you find that same panic when you're on land because everything looks the same. You don't really have beacons or markers unless you place them yourself, and you're trying not to die of hypothermia or from the stupid snow dogs or from the ice worm. So I didn't super love the on land portions. They weren't my favorites, but overall I still really liked Below Zero. I do feel like it is another great entry into the Subnautica series, but again, it's not really a true sequel. And at its pretty reasonable price, I think it's $25 USD. It might be 30. I still feel like it's a pretty good adventure. It is a shorter game. I think my playthrough was around 15 or 20 hours, and I did spend a significant amount of time crafting. But of course, you can avoid all that if you want. So, I hope you guys liked this video. Check out Subnautica Below Zero. It's available on Epic and Steam, and I think it is available on consoles as well if you want to check it out there. You know what to do. Like, comment, subscribe. Check out my Twitch and Discord below, and we'll see you in the next video.